the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
I'm okay with having good weather all the time, but it's good this week. The weather gods picked a good week, with it being the kickoff to football season.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of football season here, Cody, Saturday, we're 4 days away from Tennessee. Mike Matthews days away from Tennessee, Syracuse. What's your gut on how this game goes on Saturday?
I think Syracuse has just lost too much. I mean, if this was last year's Syracuse team, if it was Kyle McCord and that offense and all those guys they had on the team, I mean, they're replacing almost their entire team this year. Now they were good last year. They were a veteran laden team. They had the number one passing offense in the country. McCord was awesome. I like their scheme. I like the coach. I mean, Fran, he's doing a good job, but I just think with an ACC roster in general, like if Tennessee was playing last year's team, I would still take Tennessee in the game. I think top to bottom, you got to look at the rosters. You got to look at the talent on the field. And there's no world for me in which a Syracuse team replacing like 18 starters or whatever it is. I don't know the exact number, but breaking in a new quarterback, there's no world in which that Syracuse team should be able to play with Tennessee. So, and that doesn't mean it's going to be some big blowout, because Tennessee, we got our own problems. We got our own stuff we got to figure out. It's week one. We got to see what our quarterback play looks like. But overall, generally speaking, talent, coaching, I just think Tennessee is at least double digits better than Syracuse.
I tend to agree. I will say, though, there is some interesting parts of this that I think could be fascinating, where Tennessee was not a heavy blitzing team last year, and it got them into trouble against Georgia in particular. And I don't think you're going to have the defensive line that you had a year ago. You don't have any first or second rounders on this defensive line who's going to start this year. I kind of wonder, you have an Alabama transfer at left tackle for Syracuse. You have 3 new receivers, 3 talented guys, though. Like, we'll see. Jonte Cook was a former 5-star guy. He's going to be in the slot. Well, I'm curious what he looks like, but Gill seems like he's someone who could be a breakout guy for Syracuse. And then Justice Ross Simmons as well. Like, that's still, like, it's different than what they had a year ago, but there's real optimism there. Steve Angeli has played power 2 snaps for Notre Dame. I am kind of curious with him being more of a pocket passer type. I don't think you can allow him to slice and dice you and pick on a secondary that is ushering in a new corner, spring transfer guy in Colton Hood, potentially a new starter at star in Jalen McMurray, and then a new starting safety in Idris Farouk. Like, part of me wonders how aggressive Banks is going to be early on, because I think you got to make Angeli and company uncomfortable. They need to be on their heels. I'm very curious what the game plan looks like defensively out of the gate, because it could feel like an Arkansas-Tennessee game of last year if you let them slice and dice you, or Florida with Graham Mertz and company. We've seen those kind of games before where Tennessee just can't get off the field on third down. They're not getting home, and the drives just don't end. And then Tennessee, you look up the score and you're like, man, it's 7-3. And Tennessee hasn't really had the ball that much because they went 3 and out a couple times and they can't get on the field on third down. Like, there is a path. Like, I wouldn't bet on it, but I do think something that I have circled is I think Tennessee is not going to be able to get away with sending 4, especially with this new look secondary in a lot of ways. There's some firepower on the Syracuse side of things, and Angeli could be a dude. So we just have no idea what he's going to be in the system, and only having a couple months there. But I don't know. I think that is, to me, what will define whether or not this game's close or close throughout. Is, does Tennessee go super blitz heavy and really try and rattle all these new pieces on the Syracuse offense, or do they keep things in front of them, kind of what they've done in the last 2 years?
You mentioned the Arkansas and Florida games last year for Tennessee. I would just say that I think when you're looking at a team like Florida and a team like Syracuse, top to bottom, I think that Florida roster is just so much more talented than Syracuse. And Arkansas maybe more comparable, Syracuse and Arkansas, talent-wise. But, that Arkansas game was a true road game. And we were kind of in a bad spot on that game. It was after that emotional Oklahoma win. I think we were a little too up there on our high horse, and that was a tough place to play. I think a season opener at a neutral site is a different story for me. It's just the kind of game that Tennessee typically wins. I would like to know, and I don't know where you could find this. I mean, I could do a little bit of my own research, maybe later tonight, and find this and report back to you. But the last time that what I would call a middle tier ACC team beat a top third tier SEC team, because I think just program wise, I think that's the difference. I think Tennessee is right up there, maybe not with Georgia, not with Texas, but talent wise, a little closer to Alabama. Still not quite on Alabama's level either, but with the LSUs, the Ole Misses, I consider us to be kind of a top third SEC program as it stands. And Syracuse, based on what they've got this year, from what I've seen, I mean, I just don't think, like I said, I don't think it's a team that should be able to compete with Tennessee on the field. I would like to try to find an example of that, because I know the top of that conference is good. Like Clemson has championships. They can play with anybody in the country, but I just don't see it out of the Syracuse team. Maybe I'll be wrong. I mean, maybe it'll be closer than I think, but the quarterback, Angeli, I liked what I saw out of him just very briefly last year. He's been on the big stage, at least in that Penn State Notre Dame game. But
yeah, you don't want him to get
very minimal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Tennessee's come a long way from where they were at Pitt 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. But I'm with you where I just don't think there's a way Tennessee loses this game. But I do think there are ways where this game's close. I do think there's ways for this Tennessee team to blow them out. Like I don't know. I'm very curious how it ultimately unfolds on that front. But what is the biggest question for you, Cody, that you hope is answered in this game for the Tennessee side of things?
The biggest question that I hope is answered is not so much what the quarterback looks like. I mean, that's the obvious answer for everybody, but more so just how this offense looks, how it is operationally. Like I want to see, and the quarterback, of course, will be a big part of that, but I want to see how that offensive line looks. There's some chatter out there about this potentially being one of Tennessee's best offensive line units in a long time, maybe the best in the Heupel era as a unit. So I want to see how they run block. I want to see how they pass block. I want to see the true freshman David Sanders, see what he's got. I don't need him to whiff. I don't need him to get too many pre-snap penalties. I mean, you're breaking in a true freshman. You expect a couple of growing pains, but when it's a 5-star like he is, top offensive lineman in the country, I think the expectation is greater. You expect less of that acclimation time and more so just go on out there and dominate and block that defensive line, So I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see who trots out there first at running back, who gets the bulk of the carries. Is it Star Thomas you go to? Is it the local kid, Deshaun Bishop? I mean, what is the split load like? And then obviously the receivers are very intriguing. Staley, Matthews, Brazel, and the young guys. A Radar Jackson or somebody like that. Is it Travis Smith? Travis Smith.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look like at wide receiver? Do you have anybody stand out in that group?
Yeah, and it's like, do they play? How many snaps do they play? Do they go back to that 3-man rotation if Staley, Mike, and Brazel are healthy? Do they not rotate? Right? Like, that's something that could be interesting. We look at the snap count on Sunday, Cody, and we're like, oh, Brazel, Matthews, and Staley played like 50 plus snaps apiece here. And that rotation, they're just going to be fine if they're healthy. I'm right there with you with the offensive line too, because what did Lance Hurd say today? He referred to him as violent, I think, when asked about the Tennessee, which is what you want to hear when it comes to your offensive line in the SEC. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a gigantic year for Hurd, and I've been very bullish on Lance Hurd all offseason, and it's obviously going to be a lot of fun to have a true freshman 5-star number 1 tackle in Sanders anchoring the other side. But I'm with you. I'm very curious how Pendleton handles center, because we've been accustomed to Cooper Mays for 4 years, and we've seen a little bit what it looked like when you didn't have Cooper early on 2 years ago, and it was kind of
23 Florida. I remember that one well. Yeah, it was terrible.
It was tough, but it was a tough spot for Ollie to be tossed into, because Ollie was a good left guard, but he was thrown in there because you didn't have an option, right? Like, you've had all offseason to kind of find this replacement for Cooper, but we all thought it was going to be Satterwhite. Now it looks like it might be Pendleton, who was a guard at Notre Dame. I don't know. How does that work?
Well, and how about those two guards? I mean, I think those are both interesting stories too. You got the one kid; he's a homegrown kid. Perry, I just learned all about him today. I didn't. This guy kind of came out of nowhere for me because I was under the assumption it was going to be Satterwhite and then Pendleton there on the offensive line. But Perry, he's been a standout all through fall camp, and he's a Tennessee guy. He's a homegrown guy, and you always want to root for those kind of guys. And then Wendell Moy at the other guard. I mean, they say that he's just a road grader. That's what they say. Both of these guards were recruited for their run blocking. I think first and foremost, they're good pulling guards and they're good run blockers, road graders. Those are the kind of guys I like on the offensive line. Guys, they got a little bit of that mean streak in them. They're a little nasty. That's what you want out there. So I'm excited to see this offensive line. My hope is that this is a game where they can go out there and really push around Syracuse, and maybe we kind of learn a little bit more about what they've got.
Yeah, and then when you think about the
nicely
breakout
done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.